is this, that we're dreaming right now, that our whole species, 6.5 billion of us, are having a mass shared dream. That's not to go out of one's mind and, i.e., like, be crazy. That's to find oneself inside one's mind. And that's to have the realization that we're dreaming, that the psyche is not just bound, it's not just like in this, it's not found just inside of our brain, but is actually unfolding throughout the world. You see, that's the realization. I would say that's the essential thing that I'm trying to point at, is to the extent that we have the realization that what's happening deep inside our soul is actually, sort of expressing itself or giving shape and form to itself through the outside world, to have the recognition that what's playing out in the outside world is actually this reflection of something going on inside of us. That's the synchronistic moment. That's the expansion of consciousness. And that's the moment where we are able to access something greater in ourselves.
Yes, yes. In your article, The Artist as Healer of the World, you have this really interesting passage that is basically the artist as the oracle. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Sure. Well, the thing, and it's such a good point, because think about, like, with the family system, if there's an unconscious that's getting acted out in the family system, typically the kid or a person, whoever, has the most like the sensitivity, will all of a sudden, whether it's unconsciously, just act out the disconnected part of consciousness, the unconscious part in the family system. They'll just act it out, or if they can bring consciousness to it, they can actually maybe express it with words, or in a dream, or in a painting, or a dance, or something like that. So the point is that the figure of the artist is an archetypal figure that's actually really, like, plugged in to the collective unconscious of our species. And stuff that's happening in the unconscious of our species, the artist is able to creatively give shape and form to these contents. In a way, they're the mouthpiece for these contents. They're the oracle for what's actually happening in the collective unconscious of our species. And to the extent they're able to express it by giving shape and form to it, they're able then, that will speak to the unconscious in other people, because the same process is at work in the unconscious of everyone. And that actually can transform the field.
Yes.
And so from that point of view, the artist is really a shaman, is really a healer. And that's the point of that article, The Artist as the Healer of the World. It's pointing at that it's the figure of the artist, the shaman, the wounded healer, the bodhisattva. That's the figure. That's the archetypal figure that's actually going to heal our world.
Absolutely. I like that idea a lot. I think it was Joseph Campbell talked about the idea that the role of the artist is to render to us the transcendent experience, basically, of our time, to render to us these different visions and ideas, and when that occurs, when that happens, as you say, Paul, this is something that influences other people around them, and they can begin to realize, they can find something within themselves. They resonate for some reason with the painting, or with the song, or the dance, or whatever it might be. But there's something triggered within them when they see that. They identified with it. And do you think that's also potentially why many people who are artists feel very much, that this is coming from somewhere else? This is they're more like the conduit of the flow. They're just, when they're inspired. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that is exactly it. In other words, like any real artist, they understand that they're, like you're saying, they're just an instrument for, like, something deeper to actually come through and express. And so that is so much it, because it's not just coming from their own ego, but they're actually getting out of their own way, and I can talk for myself. When I do these articles, I can have a particular idea, but then at a certain point, I just have the realization, wow, there's something coming through me, and I just have to get out of the way and, like, just sort of, then it's like I'm this like some sort of, like, midwife for this birth of something. And because it's coming, or an expression of, like, something like the archetypal dimension, something that's transpersonal, that's deeper than my own ego, then it's going to, because communicate to that same dimension, to that archetypal dimension in other people's unconscious. And you see, it's because of that in my book, the final chapter, so I contemplate the madness of George Bush, a collective, this is, that we have, that we're in the middle of a collective psychosis. But I point out that the answer, the solution, is what I call an art happening called global awakening. That we, as artists, whose canvas is this universe, we can actually put our creativity together, activate the collective genius in all of us, and potentiate the field in a way where we can create like this living work of art, what I call an art happening, and I'm calling it like global awakening, in the sense that we can actually help each other to wake up to who we are, to what's happening in the world, like I was talking before about the evil, the criminality, and how we can actually come together, connect with each other through the heart, which is that's the nightmare of the powers that be, because then all of a sudden we're able, in that connectedness, through the truth, through our heart, through awareness, we actually are able to access like this greater power. It's the power of truth. And that's something that, that's the greatest power in this universe. And that's in a way, one way of articulating what this whole play that we're participating in is about.
So in a sense, you're saying that if everyone also should, fall into their role, or rather kind of follow their heart, then I guess in a way that would enable, that the world would consequently see totally different out after that point. I mean, the importance of realizing your dreams. I mean, so many people talk about that they want to paint or be able to play an instrument or what have you, but there's always something in the world that kind of distracts them from that. But what you're saying is that it's very important to follow your heart and follow your dreams, right?
Yeah, totally. Because like I was saying before, that idea of finding one's voice. The voice is related to the daimon. It's the finding one's voice, hearing one's calling, finding one's genius, connecting with the daimon. That's the very thing that's going to heal us. But like if we don't if we don't speak our voice because for whatever reason, trauma or the culture doesn't support it, then we're actually that inner voice, that guiding spirit of the daimon, like I was saying before, it turns negative and becomes a demon, and then we're actually in a suicide process. Then we're destroying both ourselves, and we're feeding into the destruction of the planet. So yeah, it's super important for any of us to find our voice, connect with our power, and to find a creative way to express that. And any one of us doing that is modeling and empowering other people to do it. And then the field gets potentiated. That becomes the culture. That we're actually, and that's a culture, like in my article on with the synchronistic phenomena, I talk about that synchronicities are cultures from a higher dimension, sort of like a bug in the system that's contagious, but it's a culture that actually propagates itself through the consciousness of our species that creates culture in our world, and that's just, it's this creative way that I found to articulate the very thing we're talking about,
Yes. Art, is all art kind of a sacred art in a way, or is it?
Yeah. Right. The thing in my article on the artists, I talk exactly about that. That at a certain point, to think about an artist as being separate from a spiritual practitioner. Yeah, no, they're the same. To be a creative artist is a spiritual path. To be an artist is exactly to be a spiritual practitioner, because doing art and actually being an instrument for something greater to come through, it actually in like a way, it's the most sacred this vocation that there can be, because it's actually the way that the deeper dream is actually insinuating itself into our world is through the figure of the artist, through whatever through their creative acts, that's actually effecting change in the whole field. So it's an incredibly sacred vocation.
Yeah. And if we talk a little bit about the shamanistic approach to all of this as well, this is another kind of key area, so to speak, in your work. And I mean, what do you define shaman as? Is that a religious thing here, or are you talking about something higher?
Right. The thing with, I mean, from one point of view, it's this archetypal figure. It's like the figure of like the healer, the medicine man. They're all different aspects of the shaman figure. But the way to understand the shaman is that the archetype of the shaman gets constellated in the human psyche due to some form of trauma or like being disturbed, with one's emotions. And so all of a sudden, say, if you're in a family and there's abuse in the family and you feel that and you become split off or you become unconscious or traumatized, that can create illness. And quite often, I mean, if not always, shamans, they get sick. They can get really sick, and sometimes they can even die if they don't unfold it through. But that sickness, it's a creative illness that's actually initiatory. And if they're able to actually assimilate what's gotten constellated in them, that then will activate this impulse in them to become a shaman. And to be one way of understanding a shaman is just somebody who's really sensitive to the unconscious in the field, in other people, in family systems, or in our country, or in our species. And, so they're able to fluidly, in a way, go back and forth between the conscious and the unconscious, and in a way sort of give shape and form to what they find, in the unconscious, and give shape and form to it consciously in a way that actually transforms not only their unconscious but the collective unconscious, because they're actually the dimension that they're working on is the collective unconscious, which connects us all. And instead of sounding like some sort of big word, the collective unconscious, it's something that we all have experience of every moment of our lives. Yes. It's the part of our psyche. It's the part of our being through which we're all interconnected, Yeah. And that's something that, as we actually add awareness to that and are able to consciously, kind of express that or connect with each other consciously through the medium of the collective unconscious, then in a sense we all can be shamans for each other. And help each other to really activate that archetype even deeper. And so that's just this other creative, sort of this way of articulating, whether you call it an artist or a shaman, wounded healer. It's all just different articulations of the same archetypal figure that's actually being constellated in the collective psyche of all of us. And we're being invited to step into it, to participate in our own evolution, and actually step into the dream and change the dream.
It's a much more simpler approach, I feel, than the approach of that we have to go out there in the streets and protest against whoever and whatever, and demand that they're arrested and put in jail or what have you. That's obviously another part of this as well, that we need to take responsibility on multiple levels here. But what you're talking about is a much more it's one level up, so to speak, here, Right.
And the thing about what I'm saying, it doesn't like necessarily. I'm not saying that to go out in the street and to protest is not important. No, that's helpful too. But we have to deal also with the deeper levels of what's happening. And Getting back to the shaman for a second, like with indigenous shamans, the instruments of their trade would typically be like rattles and drums and stuff like that. And the thing is, we're these shamans in like these current times, and our tools and instruments and implements might be like, kind of the computer or video cameras or something.
Sure.
It's very creative the way we can actually kind of express our like expanded awareness and can actually step into the garments of being shamans. We don't have to necessarily have like feathers and robes and all that, but as people in the modern age, we just, our tools, like I was saying, are just, really, much more cutting edge. And I think it's really helpful and inspiring for people to have the realization that by them just following their process, like for example, for me, I wasn't politically,